Hello and welcome. This is my very first podcast. Not sure that I have a lot today, but the topic I am bringing forward is a very long discussion, and it has to do with all the weird things that have happened since I've moved to my rural property. Now, I live very close to South Australia, so I'm on the south end of Australia, I guess you could call it. And it all began back in about 2018. Could have been much further back than that, but just the push to move rural was further back to 2018. Me and my family, my partner, and he might have been one and a half, maybe a little bit older. We lived in a 3-bedroom house, I'd say. So you have the 2 bedrooms upon entry, one being ours and one being the firstborn's room, and then you have the living room, the lounge room, then you have the kitchen, the bathroom, which are close together. Actually, yeah, so a bathroom without a toilet in it, so that's the first one. You have the shower, and I think we had a bath, I'm not too sure. And then you go down the back, and then the toilet is pretty much on its own next to the laundry. And then a spare sort of room, I guess a study. You could use it as another room. And then you go outside and you have a giant garage and a couple of little sheds. And I'd like to say a decent sized backyard. Anyways, let's get to the point. So this was in the suburbs in Victoria. So it was not too city, but sort of like ghetto-ish. And you get the gist. It's in the suburbs, sort of in the city, I guess. Nowhere near rural. So I got into these videos based on a black metal artist that I've been following since I was 16. I'm now 33, and so I'd been following him because he did some off-the-grid videos and explained how he got there and his permaculture efforts and how to save money and live off the grid and create a task force to do such a thing. It required patience because it was sort of like a cult mentality, following blindly for someone's not religious beliefs, but their belief systems, when I've never been like that at all. I don't know, I guess I went a little crazy back then, and it went from one thing to me removing all of the stuff I had. I got rid of it all. And I used to sit on the computer every single day, gaming computer, and game from morning till night, which was a very unhealthy habit, and I really hated it. And as soon as I woke up to it, I realized, I had to change. And back then I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast and enjoying a lot of the topics that were on there. So from that, I changed the water I drank. Yes, it went from tap water to boxed water, which is just annoying. But realistically, I don't think I would have had it any other way in the suburbs, because I didn't have a rainwater tank and a filter system, and filtering out tap water seems like a big nightmare. One of the other things was basic health changes, which included fasting, intermittent fasting. Actually did start getting into archery. I still have the bow that I purchased from back then, and that was based off the Joe Rogan thing, but I'm not much of one to actually go out to go hunting, and I haven't really done that yet. I've switched my views from carnivore to herbivore, but not really. Realistically, my views are that I don't really want to go out of my way to actually kill any animals, unless it's for the purpose for survival, and I haven't really needed to do such a thing yet. And I do favour less of a meat diet, but it can be hard sometimes. Anyway, so I guess I adopted a lot of the stuff from there, and then this other person that I was following at the same time, and then I started doing some gardening in the suburbs and got rid of all my stuff and worked out how much I really want to pay in electricity and how much I really want to pay in gas, and I drove my partner crazy probably because I went insane and decided all this crap in the garage I got to get rid of, all the crap in the sheds I got to get rid of, all the stuff that I own I have to get rid of. And it came with huge success. It wasn't spring cleaning, it was getting rid of all the stuff and actually going out of the way to think about the next step. And eventually, with all the calculations and the Word documents, things like that, I actually came up with the math and eventually reduced the need for a lot of things. I had a few subscriptions to things, unnecessary things, one being the AFL, which I haven't even watched in a long time. Subscriptions to right-wing media stuff, which I don't even follow anymore. I'm sort of in the middle, don't really care about anything. I didn't care about politics before, and then somehow I was forced to care back when everyone was losing their minds and creating a division, which, by the way, is what I think was a creation from 2016 to 2020, creating a huge division from that 4-year period, and then, COVID coming out and furthering the division of people. I think it was all planned and set up that way. Anyway, getting off topic and going into things I don't want to. So, how do we get into this? Reduced the bills, and then I think we started saving some money from doing that. And we used to eat a lot of food, so I'd say we were one of the people that would eat like 3 meals a day, and they'd be pretty trashy, and then in between all that we'd have a lot of snacks. It got to a point where it was pretty much wasting a lot of money, and it just wasn't good. It was creating this gluttony and lots of heartburn and just eating every second of the day. I would guess that that's what happened from memory anyway. So eventually we reduced it down to at least like one meal, maybe a little bit of snacks. That was a good thought process, because now we've adopted that. Even if we eat something that's not good, at the very least we try our best to do that. And I don't think we eat as much as we used to, even though we have problems now. But so once we did that, we were pregnant with another child, and he came to be in 2019. Now, this was a rough time period. So from 2018, I can't remember the dates from 2018, but it was like a very sloppy, slack plan. But what ended up happening was trying to figure out how we can go to the next step, because on my mind was I need to get land and I want to live off the grid, and the way I was going to do it is get an empty block of land, put a caravan on it, and that was it. And knowing what I know now, that probably would have been a problem, but we got there in the end through luck and help, and it's good. So baby's born in 2019, January. Our lease is coming up to an end, probably around March. So this baby comes to be 2 months old before we make a decision. And what we ended up doing was, with very little money we had, I don't know how we got it. I don't know if we saved it. I don't know anything from memory. I don't know if we got like some sort of tax, or I don't even know. But we ended up taking whatever we had. I can't remember how much it was, but we ended up getting I'd say a $5,000 loan, or $3,900. I can't remember. It was to cover a cost of a caravan. So we were looking at, I don't even know if we were looking at a specific caravan or if we got the loan first and then started looking, but it was very quick. I'm willing to guess that we found something and then we tried to quickly get a loan for it and then did that. And it was a very, very rash decision. And it's one that can be a struggle, but I'll get into that. So we ended up getting that loan and going and getting a caravan. And this was I think it was a pop-top. It was called a cabana. Very interesting looking caravan. And we bring that back and had a look at it and fixed up anything we needed, and it was all in our name and everything was all good. And then we had no idea what we were doing. We didn't know if we thought that this was a silly idea and then we'd just have the caravan there and that would be it. But when March came along, we said, okay, that's it, we're doing it. I think that was a very hard time because we lived in a rental for, well, we were renting since 2014, so we had two separate properties. And yeah, so 2014 to 2019, sorry, like a 5-year period. And that was a hard decision to make. So with that, we did it and left. We didn't know where to go, so we quickly went to my parents' house and parked it there. They weren't too happy, and at that time period, we tried many times to see if we were able to live with them so we could save some money. For a year or however long, it probably wasn't a long time, they weren't interested in that idea, and not too happy at all. So we ended up going there with the van, and they didn't like it. And we had fights, and I guess we made communication with her family. So we put a burden on these people, and I guess I feel bad, but I don't know. Then we went to her parents' house, and one person didn't like it. So that was also short-lived. It might have been a month, I'd say. And then we moved to a caravan park, which was in a rural mountain, and we ended up paying $150 a week to park our van there. And they were very good to us, and they understood our situation, and they helped us. There was no interference. There was no problems. We went to a maternal health nurse was in that area, and we went to children's programs and all sorts of things. So there was no problems. We got our foot out there, and we were in there, so there was no troubles. We weren't homeless or anything like that. We were catered for. We went and did our shopping. We had everything we needed. The very first time we did the off-the-grid thing, I think before we left, we went shopping. So we got the caravan, and I think we looked around. Oh, wow. It might have been when... Well, one thing we bought was actually... Before we moved, I think it was the portable battery. It was 40 amp hours. We did not know what we were doing. We might have purchased that setup in advance, and we probably tested the setup, because I distinctly remember going to somewhere in between all of that, possibly. God, so we might have actually purchased this battery and then a solar panel, which was 100 watts, and then I think after we left my parents, we went to a quiet, secluded, popular camping place for about a week. I think that's what we did. I can't really remember, but it sounds familiar. And then we moved to her parents. I think that's what happened. So we were rocking a very small battery and a solar panel, and I don't think they were quite compatible with one another. Anyway, so it was sort of a stressful couple of weeks, I guess, and then bounced from her parents to the caravan park. Then she made communication with her uncle, and he was concerned and worried. So he invited us to go to Queensland. And I was hesitant because realistically we were trying to do savings and actually go and get a property and finally be settled. And a lot of people didn't understand this, and they didn't quite get it. So this was sort of annoying to me because I was trying to work it out, but I guess at the same time we didn't really figure it out until after we went to Queensland, which was sort of very good. No, so we got that invite, and it was a long decision to make because it was just like, what the hell? What was he thinking? And did he know what we were up to, what we were thinking, what was on our minds? Did he know anything? Anyway, we went up there, and it was a very big switch, and it made me upset because we moved from nice rural, quiet, beautiful surroundings to an apartment in Queensland, in far north. And you can imagine this is just a nightmare, especially if your thought process is to be healthy and off the grid. So we went there. It was a duplex. It was what's called? There was like a gate that opened automatically, so you were sort of imprisoned, if you want to call it that, with a bunch of apartments and like a little play area, and there were a few children in that area. And that was an alright time thinking about it now, but I was losing my mind over there. I did have help. I got employment. I got a chance to do some work, and I did that. And my partner got a job there as well. And I think we both lasted a month. I think she lasted longer probably than me. Mine was hell because the person I was working with was pretty much pushing me around and belittling me in many ways, to try and get me to work harder, but also very insulting at the same time. So I ended up quitting that. I was offered to take over the business because they knew this person. They knew what they were like. I probably would have had a fair chunk of money if I did that, but I didn't do it. And my partner didn't stay at her job for long either. She has pain issues, and that's her disability. And they were very rough, and it was a nightmare to work there, apparently. She ended up having to cry at one point at work. And this was a McDonald's, and a McDonald's that hired a lot of disability people. I'd say anyway, a few. And there was one point in time where there was some sort of competitive competition going on between the McDonald's in the area. And basically the managers were trying to earn huge points. And to do that, they had to push around the little people and basically rush them around. Anyways, so we lived in that apartment. He offered to pay our rent, her uncle, and he did that for a while, and I was pretty much knew that he would want to stop doing that. That was the main reason we went up there, is for him to help us with it, because we went from paying $215 in rent in the suburbs to $150 in a mountain, and then way up there, $280 a week after a short while. It was great. I wouldn't say we were tricked up there, but whatever, it is what it is. And he's been very good, and he's a very close person to us. So he was very helpful. It's not like he wasn't, and helpful to the point that you have to take that help, because if you don't take that help, he's not going to trust you, and then he won't help you anymore. And so I took the help, got the job he got for me, and I did it. It was a pain in the ass, but I did it. After not working for a while, he actually got me into employment, and I was pretty much doing it. It was on call, so it was a pain, because I would get calls at really stupid hours, and I would have to wait pretty much at home all the time, and that was a nightmare. I felt like I was trapped in this apartment, and it wasn't good. I spent most of the time trying to go out, and then he'd call, and at some point I mentioned, what's going on here, and he said, I can pick you up anywhere that you are, and I was just getting too comfortable with just having that freedom without the employment, I suppose. But it was was a pain in the ass, that job. I wouldn't say the work itself, but the bloke pushing me around. Just, yeah, I mean, there were so many ridiculous scenarios that even the people that we were working for noticed, and yeah, not good. So we did that, and then we actually started saving quite a bit of money, and that was very helpful. And then we slowly discussed what we wanted with the uncle, and then at some point I really just wanted to go back to Victoria. So that's where my family was, and I don't know, it felt like a lot of discomfort just being so far away. It's like 34 hours away. Yeah, that wasn't good fun. But it's a very nice place, and I would live there again if I had a lot of money. We asked her family to ask the owners of the property they were in, which they knew personally, if they could let us stay on one of their blocks of land with a caravan. And we negotiated that offer, and it ended up being $50 a week. And we were there for about 5 months until Mr. Councilman came along and said that we were reported. That was the most annoying time, because across the road from us we had a food bank, and we used to go there with her parents and grab some food and things like that. We didn't necessarily need it, but it was just extra food to have, and just it was bad food, and we ended up eating like crap horribly when we lived there, but that's what you get for living with family. And so people became a bit invasive, and they found out what you were doing, and they came over and tried to look at everything, and they thought you were like struggling and things like that and had nothing. So it could have been anyone that reported us. They didn't realize that we had family, in the area with everything if we needed anything. And we were saving stacks of money, so why are we gonna stop doing that? These people didn't understand that. However they got their property and whatnot, is probably through normal means, or they had family to help them, or I don't know, but so we had that for like 5 months, I'd say, and in that 5 months they had the pandemic thing start to happen, and that was a nightmare, because we quite literally stayed in the van for chunks of time because we felt like we were forced to do that, or else they're going to come after us and brutalize us and punish us for stepping outside. And for people who did that for years, I really don't think you're normal, because for the month or whatever we did it for was very nightmare fuel and not healthy and not good, and said, nah, enough's enough. I ended up just going for walks and doing what I wanted, and I did not listen to any of the advice, because at some point get stuffed, So after that happened, the person that didn't want us to live there at her parents' house, one of the people didn't want us to live there, but we gave them no choice essentially because we had nothing else, and I guess that can be a problem for a lot of people, having someone force their themselves onto you. But you'd think that if you try to communicate with family and say, look, my idea is I want to come live with you, I'll pay my way, I'm doing it to save so I can buy a property, you'd think that they would help you. But apparently that didn't happen from the original family, which is my parents. So we ended up having to try and do most of it on our own. So we did ask if we could stay at her parents' house again. And we finally got to be able to do that because we actually asked the property owner. And before, it was the person who didn't want us there was communicating with them and obviously maybe not telling us the whole truth. Anyway, we stayed there. It was about $100 a week. But I think that they said after a short minute, don't worry about the money. Just pay electricity for the freezer that we put there. I gave them the freezer in the end because we didn't need it. And by the end, we had a huge stack of money. And then we were searching for properties to see what was cheap, because back then blocks of land were pretty cheap and we had enough money for a block of land out of pocket. But our uncle, my partner's uncle, after all this, he understood what we wanted, and while we were in Queensland, he was trying to help us buy property, but kept getting rejected. That was at a different time period, and he had a lot going on and things like that, and I don't know. And then we moved back to Victoria, and then he was helping us then, and then we found something with a property on it, so a house, I guess, and half an acre and a reserve behind us, and yeah, so that's where we're at the moment. And we ended up paying half of it. Her uncle gave us some money and he got a loan for us, and we paid that loan off within 1 year. And that was $25,000. We put about $440 a week on it, and a year later, done. And he put in 10,000. We put in 30, I think, something like that. Yeah, 30. And we used some of the money to get off the grid, I suppose. We didn't know what we were doing, and that was the biggest pain, because our plan was to get a freezer, and we did. We got a fridge-freezer combo thing. We used it as a freezer until it stopped being a freezer. We absolutely had no idea what we were doing. And that's how we ended up here. In 2020, around October, we purchased a half-acre property with a building on it, and it was built by the owners, refurbished essentially, and we made it our home, and it is still our home. Now, to understand anything in this situation and all the things that have happened since living here, you'll have to understand we do not live in the suburbs, in the city. We're not surrounded by heaps of properties, so this makes all my stories a bit more odd. And to understand, you'll have to visualize this for a minute. So behind us we have a reserve, and it's not a city type reserve, it's bushland with lots of trees and shrubs, and that spans for about a kilometre, but it's not too big if you think about it. It's its own little section, and it covers the entire back end of where we live up to our street, and it stops at a certain point. It's about a kilometre or two in length along a road, I suppose, and in it is sandy roads, and you can walk through or drive through, and you'll meet with a cemetery, which is very small, and you'll be met with farmland which surrounds this reserve. And on one section to the end of the reserve, there is a back road, and it's a paved back road. It's a sealed back road, and that stretches on for it can go on for more than 30 kilometers, that entire length of that road, that one road. And a lot of it is empty farmland, just farmland in general. And then you will pass a lot of reserves again, and then a campground. Now, coming back to our property with the reserve immediately behind us, if you were to go in like a square to like the left of us, so the side of our property where our mailbox is, there'll be, properties or houses on that side, and each of them have half an acre or an acre, and they are also in front of a reserve. Now, on the other side of that is another sealed road, and that is the front of our property, and that would be, I'd say, like 500 meters from us, maybe less, maybe more. And on that sealed road is a major highway. That major highway goes from where we live all the way up to Adelaide, or all the way up to Melbourne. So it's a very big highway, I suppose, that branches off and all sorts of things. And in between these two major cities, there are little country towns, and they come off of this major highway. So for us, we live 13 kilometers from the closest shop, which we do not go to anymore, and we barely go to that town anymore because it's so odd and very backwards, and I'm not a fan of it. I've learnt that over the years. And the other town, which is actually fairly friendly and fairly nice, and the people are very different. Although these two towns are within 30 kilometers of each other, I guess kilometers to me and distance between towns is different in perspective to other people. I feel like they are very close, and people in the region would be exactly the same as one another, but apparently not. So the other town is about 26 kilometers away from us, and that's the one we frequent the most nowadays, as of recently, I'd say. Now, hopefully there's a visualization of that, and I can get into this. So when we first moved in here, I don't know if it was immediately within the first year, I don't know if it was the second year, I can't quite put my finger on it, but there was and we weren't really knowledgeable about bushfires, but sort of. There was a bushfire near us, not too close, obviously, but it was in a popular campground bushland area which stretches over many kilometers through towns from one end to the other. So it's quite big, and we had smoke coming over, and it was a horrible year. And it was probably the first or second time meeting one of the neighbors, and they'd come over and they had a chat with us and said this is the first year that they are just going to leave and not fight the fire, and if there was a fire. And then they were talking to us about the area and things like that, and they said to us that once before there was somebody living in an abandoned property, and this is one that's very close to us now, and they were basically squatting in there. I'm not too... I don't have a problem with certain things these days. I'm very open to so many ideas, and I think people should be left alone to live how they want, especially if there are some abandoned properties that aren't being used. So apparently that person was living in there, and then they were in the bush, in the reserve. They built a lean-to at one point, and they were in that bush, and then they left at one point apparently, and then she was explaining that now they are back. So she was talking in the past and explaining how this person was here, and now they're not, and then they were here again, and pretty much when we moved in they were in. Now and she was saying how he was stealing from the area, which I suppose isn't a good thing at all. But there's a lot of politics involved with a thing like this, and what's the truth and what's not the truth. Who really knows? This person that was living in the bush, eventually they built a camp. They had a tent and tables and a lot of stuff. Now, they were there for a while, and I'd noticed them. I didn't really care about their presence. I wasn't too bothered by them going and taking from properties or anything like that, because I didn't know if it was true. I didn't know anything. And essentially we live in a town where people have a lot of junk in their yard. A lot of junk that they're not using, and I have a lot of junk too, which I quite easily could have given away, and I have a lot of times. And a lot of times it's easier to get rid of that crap than to keep it. So my thought process is I don't really care. But it doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing at all. And I don't condone it at all, really, but you got to really be open to certain things. And apparently this person had someone bring them food and bring them certain things and whatnot. So eventually they were monitored, and at some point they were removed from the bush by the police, and we knew when that happened because we seen the police vehicle park at the cemetery and then walk through the bush and go find the guy. And I think they used a helicopter as well to actually scout where they were and everything. Oh, it was weird. And then, yeah, they were taken. I don't even know what happened to them. I don't know if they were actually put into a mental institution, because that's what I found out. But yeah, I knew where his camp was, and after he was taken and whatnot, I went over there and had a look. Filmed it a couple times. I don't even know if I got the footage, but I really got to find it. And he had a lot of stuff. to the ordinary person, he would have seemed dangerous, and to one of the neighbours, apparently he was aggressive and dangerous, but to me, I think he was probably just like, I want to be left alone. What are you doing bothering me? But he did a lot of weird things, so who knows? Well, not a lot of weird things, but he was sort of... I'll get to that. Anyway, yeah, so I went there, and it was coming up to summer again, and time kept going by, and none of this stuff was being removed from the bush. And there was a giant gas bottle and battery wires, lots of electronics that were pulled apart in there, and no one from the council, no one was removing the stuff. It was there, and then for a couple months, less or more, it was still there, and if we hadn't have called it in, I think it would have still been there. Eventually that stuff was removed, all of it, and yeah, it's clean, it's gone. And sometimes when I walk through there, it's just a weird and bizarre feeling, because I'd walked past the dude a couple times, and I don't know, just seemed like a bush dude, and apparently he was a Vietnam vet or something. Yeah, he had a cool setup. I mean, I envy the dude in many ways. Very hard to live in the bush. I have not done it, but I want to do it. Anyway, so that was one of the first things that quite literally happened when we lived here. The very first time we moved here, we moved a month before our settlement. We lived in a little hotel. It was pretty nice. This was the easiest and best option that we had, and that was, we paid money for it. We walked to the shop every day because we were in a town that had a shop. So every day for like a month, we grabbed what we needed, did what we needed, and lost a bit of weight from, just having that ease of access to the shop. And yeah, I mean, that was a really, really good time before we moved out here. So anyway, the first time we moved or travelled through to that town, the first town, like the 13 kilometre away town, this was during the pandemic anyway, there was a car pulled over in the middle, I think, of sort of like a busy street, and they had their boot open, and the police were checking their car, and I was like, what the fuck? Because I hadn't seen anything like that before. And this is part of the weird stuff, because this area, this region, the police are very backwards. They're very frequent. They're around a lot. And that's something that turns me off. I don't know if I noticed it in the city, in the suburbs. I mean, I guess it would be similar to that, but very weird because it's sort of like rural. Anyway, so that was one of the weird things. I'm trying to put them in order. I think before the guy was taken from the bush, we live in such an interesting spot, because you'd think that no police would be out here, because the closest police stations are many kilometers away, and they're not really manned at all. So it's sort of odd. Anyway, so one of the times there's like 5 police cars speeding down our street, and this is like a dirt road that connects to the highway, and they were going down and around, weaving around, and had their sirens on, and then they went somewhere, I don't know, but it's just an odd sight, because you wouldn't think that would happen. It just seems so bizarre, and that's one of the times. And then there was another time where there was a property for sale, pretty much on the highway, and the properties here have a value of like $5,000 to $7,000 each, like half acre. So this one was for auction, and all the town folk went there to try and auction. We were to try and bid on the auction, and we were one of the people. And they had an auctioneer, or whatever you call them, and they asked and said, anyone want to start the bidding? And everyone knew what to start at, so we started at $5,000, because that's what the properties are worth. Now, it went from that to above $10,000, above $17,000, above $20,000, until they made a phone call to someone in Melbourne. And that person, I believe they purchased, or it might have been Sydney, somewhere far away. They purchased it for, I think, $28,000. And I guess one of the main reasons is because there were outstanding fines and things like that on the property that the council was trying to get back. But it was just a weird, odd, sneaky way of getting more money for something that has no value on it. Anyway, so not too long after that, this 1 acre property, I think it was split into 2 and resold for like $28,000 each, instead of $28,000 for one. And that was sold to someone in Melbourne. So our property didn't go up in value really that much, and people in the area, their properties didn't go up that much either. So that was quite odd. And there was a police officer there at the auction as well. This was during COVID, so I don't know if they had to be there. I'm not too sure. I guess I don't really want to talk about pandemic weirdness, because that's obviously, there's going to be a lot of weird stories in that. That's a different topic. I'm talking about region weirdness. Anyway, so what else? We thought that was odd. Anyway, it's such a weird area because you wouldn't think anyone would travel through. I know it's on a highway and there's a reserve, and it's basically like, it's sort of a known reserve but not a known reserve. There's not many visitors, but people can know about it if they look it up online. But it's just odd when you start living here, and then there's just unusual amount of traffic. Some odd cars, odd business cars, odd this, odd that, and it can be quite weird. Anyways, I'm trying to remember a lot of the stories because there's a lot, but I want to get them in order, but I suppose it's not going to happen. So we got into fishing at one point. This is probably not even in order. And there was a specific spot that we went to, and it was along a river, so that river goes through a lot of towns, and it's a long river, and this spot was sort of secluded, but it was a skiing hotspot as well. It said no dogs allowed on one of the signs, and on one of these days we were out fishing and we had our dog. On this part of the river, so on this river it's just a bit odd, because one section says no dogs allowed and then the rest of it it's just like fair game. So it's sort of weird that would take place, but we weren't sure whether or not it was no dogs allowed during the skiing competition. I mean, that would make a lot more sense. For most of the year there's no event on to do with the skiing. Anyway, so we were there with our dog, and at this particular time there were dirt bike noises. So you could hear just someone in the area. There's got to be a property there where there are dirt bikers doing whatever they're doing at their property. So we were fishing, and it was just very weird, because I can't remember if there were these kids that came on their dirt bikes and then just went to a toilet there or something. I don't know what they were doing. And I don't know if I'm twisting the stories around or whatnot, but I can't remember if they came first and then the next thing happened, or the next thing happened first and then they. But it would make sense if the dirt bike kids came first and then this thing happened. Anyway, so let's just say the dirt bike kids came first, and then I don't know what they were doing. So then shortly after there was a boat coming along the river. At first we didn't think anything of it, but they were acting weird and their character was very odd. It's like a character from GTA, Grand Theft Auto almost, and they were either speeding through or doing some sort of maneuver that would make the water ripple in a certain way that would scare the fish away. And I guess they thought that they would get rid of us. And so they went around, they did a U-turn in front of us, didn't look at us or anything, then went back up to obviously land their boat next to their rural property, I'm guessing. And then not too long later, probably someone in their 50s, some male in their 50s came with the dirt bike and parked up above like where we were. So like we were down on like some sort of mound hill thing where the river was, and above was like, you know, a car park type thing. And he had a gold chain on, grayish stubble, and like grey hair, short hair, and a gold chain. And I don't think he had a license plates on his dirt bike. And anyway, he pretty much said, you can't have dogs here, and he was having a go and whatnot. And then I was saying, oh, well, you can't have, you've got an unregistered vehicle. So I was throwing back at him, because I believe it seems a bit odd that you can't have dogs in one area and not the other. Anyway, that was just weird. I mean, I don't condone my behaviour, but I'm making a moral decision because I know someone else who takes their dog there, and I know another person who takes their dog there, and it's just like a spot you take your dog. I don't understand. Anyway, so after I had a go at him, he left. I went to the car to get my camera because I had this feeling he's going to go and get someone. And then he did, obviously, because two, like, young adults, I think, they came there and acted like these intimidators, and then they parked their bikes near us, and then went on some bench in front of us and tried to talk to us in a friendly manner. There was no discussion about it. They were just trying to act as intimidators. Well, I guess it partially worked because I just wanted to leave. I don't like confrontation, but sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I'll tell people how it is, but anyway. So we left, and I haven't been in that spot since. I guess that sort of worked for them. But there was one time shortly after, like, I don't know, it might have been weeks later or months, I don't know. We went down to a weir, so like a weird ass waterfall, whatever, and we did fishing there. And then there was some normal motorbike guy with bald hair, and he just looked so suspicious, looking down at me and my family, and it just looked so out of place. It didn't look like a friendly person at all. I don't know if that was in relation to any of that. I don't know anything, but it just seems odd just how that came to be. But anyway, that was another odd thing. There's a lot of stuff that happened. So we didn't change our address for a while when we moved, and apparently that's a bad idea. We'd been pulled over by highway patrol a handful of times for that alone, except 3 of the times we were called out for not doing that, and another 3 times they just said it was a random pullover session. They never mentioned not updating our address or anything like that, which I call bullshit on it being random after that, because at one point we purchased a new car, and immediately when I purchased the new car I was pulled over when I grabbed the car off the lot on that very day. And then when we went to Adelaide, again we were pulled over, which was just annoying. And so I think since living here I've been pulled over like 8 times. 6 of the times were when I didn't update the address, and I guess the other times, I don't know, were just apparently random. One of the first times we went through the town that's 13 kilometres away, they had one of those blockades where there's a bunch of police and then they breathalyze you and stuff, but you wouldn't think it would be there. You wouldn't think that they would have that there. It just seems so odd because it's a small country town. It's not in the suburbs, but it seems like they are very picky out here and very nasty, to the point years later, whenever I go out now, it's almost as if I see a police car or highway patrol every time I go on that highway, and it's a long stretch of road. But I guess now I've realized at what times they actually travel, and they come from certain locations, and I guess they hang out in certain towns, and in many ways I think they are manned in certain places that they are not. I have a disliking for them because this area is so bloody odd. So the reason why we don't go to our local town anymore is because after a while the people, when you go to the RGA there, the people are just so backwards and weird and very, I don't know, the worst type of rumour spreading people in that town. Yeah, blabbers, just nasty people, to the point where actually we stopped going to the RGA mainly because we had child protection come to our house. But that was sort of an us issue. Now, we had the baby in Melbourne because we did not want to have the baby here. We thought we were comfortable having the baby here, but it turns out the obstetrician was playing games with my partner for a while. And then I went to the first appointment. Usually I go to all the appointments, but this time she went to all the appointments. And then I went to the first appointment, and this guy was very threatening. And then I said, nope, we're having the baby in Melbourne. Because the other two were born in, like, the city, I guess. In the suburb city type thing. And so, yeah, anyways, we had a house nurse, midwife come out to Melbourne, check on the baby, and did all the checks and everything like that. And then we went back home. We said we don't need to see the maternal health nurse. We are making that decision. And then, of course, a while later, actually, what was it? Like a year later, I would say, we had the child protection come to the house. So it went like this. We didn't find out till later on because they're not allowed to tell you who did it. They're not allowed to tell you who reported you or anything like that. They have to keep it secrecy. But the thing is, they're protecting nasty people. And one of those nasty people was the maternal health nurse. We found out from our neighbour who has a daughter, a nurse daughter, whatever, who works at the same hospital as the maternal health nurse. And we found out she came to our rural property when we weren't there, and then from that she dubbed us into child protection for whatever reason, because we refused to see her, I suppose. And through all that hellish nightmare, at the end of it, after making us feel comfortable, they basically forced us to go to a doctor. And by forced, I mean they won't close the case until you do as they ask you to do. And this is a threat because if you don't do what they ask you to do, they go to the next step, which would be court orders, and they will do whatever they want with you based off of nothing. And so one of our first thoughts anyway was to go to the doctors to get our children checked up on, but then we just did it because they told us to. It was a very annoying time. They're not very good people. They try and get you to trust them, and then they do a 180 on you and then basically force you to do something. So that happened, and that's one reason why we don't go to the store there anymore, because we've seen, apparently my partner has seen that maternal health nurse, and that's what triggered the call in, I suppose. And it's and as you go along in time, you realize why they want your address. You realize what this is all for, and it's just a scary underworld. One of the other major reasons that we don't go there anymore at the moment is because it seemed like it was just normal, but there was one time the police, the first time this was me, because I was paranoid about them. I was like, oh damn, they're up my ass, they're gonna pull me over, whatever. I made a quick turn into like a skate park and then quickly got out of my car, and then they basically thought that must have been a weird move. So they parked there for a second and looked at us and just, we didn't even see them because they got heavily tinted windows, but they were there, waiting there, and then they left. And then another time we were at the skate park, this was ages later, I guess. They went around a turning bend, but before they completed the turn, they were angled straight in a spot you shouldn't really be sitting and waiting there. They weren't really parked, but they were stopped, and they were just like, I guess, staring, I guess monitoring or something, I don't know, but they were just idling there for ages. Not ages, bloody hell, no. And then I went to the car and grabbed my camera, and then they sped off, and I don't know, maybe I could have been paranoid about that one, but anyway. And another time we were parked somewhere, then my partner noticed that we were being watched by something because she saw something out of the corner of her eye, and then she seen it was the police staring at her. She got in the car, told me about it, and then they made a complete U-turn, and then she told me about it, so I quickly ducked into a parking lot, and they went about their day. I mean, it's makes you paranoid, but when you notice their weird behaviour, it ain't good. And around here, they're very odd. There was another time when we were pulled over, quite recently. This was on a Easter holiday or something, so the demerit points were like double, I think it was. And we were at a market stall, like doing a market, and I was watching this police officer just hang around there all day, basically talking to everyone. I don't like him, and he looked so stuck up, and since living here, I've just hated them so much. Anyway, so after me being bloody paranoid about that, went to our car after the market. He had gone just before the market. After that, there was a stop sign. Then we turned off, went about our way. Moments later, out of nowhere, he comes speeding down the highway, pulls us over, and then gives us a grilling session about how we didn't stop for the stop sign. Obviously, we couldn't prove that at all, but we weren't thinking about like that because we drive every day, and we've never been called up once about any stupid basic like issue like that, and I've never had any trouble with that type of thing before. So I had to go at him because I was certain I didn't bloody just go. And then I was just thinking, how the hell did you even see me? Because I couldn't see him at all. And so he made claim that he was hiding somewhere, which maybe, but he wasn't anywhere to be found to me. That was very annoying, because out of the 12 years I've been driving, that's the very first time I've been pulled over for like a non-issue, like something so beyond silly, like jaywalking. It's just a joke. Like, I wasn't like speeding out, and yeah, I don't know. I've been driving every day for like 12 years, so I haven't really had any issues like that before. The only other time that I've been fined for something was, again, another stupid fucking thing. And that was obscuring my license plate, which I didn't know at the time was a thing. Because I purchased a bicycle, and the guy that gave me the bicycle, the guy I bought the bike off, he gave me a bike rack, and I put it on, and I didn't know it at all. And then I was pulled over, conveniently, on that very day that I grabbed the bike. And I took them to court, the police, because I was just like, what the hell, you're taking away points, and the more points you get, the more chances you are to lose your license. And the judge was in my favor because she thought that was ridiculous, but they couldn't remove my points. And that's what the police said to the judge, even though the judge has the most power. So that was the only other time. The other times I've been pulled over is because obviously my car wasn't that great, because I didn't have money to have a good car. But I mean, the other times I've been pulled over were weird too, and that was in the suburbs. But that's not about where I live now. What other weird things have happened? So I guess we found out a bit more about our little town, and apparently there was a popular greyhound racer that did their duties in in Adelaide, and on the way through past our town, no less, they apparently crashed their car into a highway property and died. And one of the greyhounds, the winning greyhound, was racing around our little town. This was a long time ago. And yeah, it was some weird article. I don't know. I only found that one out recently. There's a lot of... another weird thing, actually. So I'm trying to think of things. So there was a murder at the town that's 26 kilometers away from where we live, and I found out recently, apparently they put the wrong guy in jail, in remand, so meaning they put him in a cell without trial, and they basically said that he's the one who did it, even though there were two other suspects who were more suspicious than this. And when you question the police, they won't give you an answer, which is typical of country police, I suppose. That was one other thing that's weird. There's been plenty of weird things, but I'd have to remember them. Anyways, that's enough from me. I'm out of here.